going through these chapters, you start to see different things.
Thanks, dogs. Sorry.
So, now that you know what that means, devotion to pleasure, how does it change your perception of Corinthians that put their trust in Messiah Yeshua? How big of a step did they have to take in the lifestyle that they led in Corinth, in the pagan idolatry, the stuff that was around them? You know, we're in our culture, we have things that we deal with. Television, radio, internet, I mean, things in our culture that they never had. But think about what their name means. The people themselves. So, are we after pleasure? Are we after the things of God? So, as we move forward, keep those things in mind. Now, when I was praying to Abba, and he was ministering to me through this, one word kept coming up over and over and over. And this was it. Does anybody recognize what that is?
The wall.
Foundation wall.
The Western Wall.
Yep, that's what's underneath the Western Wall.
That's part of the wall that leads to the back end of the temple.
Yeah.
That's in the tunnel.
So when you see a lot of the pictures you see of Jerusalem, you see they call it the Wailing Wall or the Western Wall.
Yes.
As that continues down, these are original stones. And I guess now you can go into the quarry where these were hewn. They call it Solomon's Quarry or something like that.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, some of these stones are over 25 foot in width.
Wow.
You can tell the original stones have that beveled edge on
Yep,
them.
right here.
The replacements don't.
Right.
The original ones all have that beveled edge.
So when you see this picture, and you know that's what's holding up the entire Temple Mount, what do you think about?
If those crumble, you're going to have an issue.
You're going to have an issue? Well, with that type of foundation, what words might come up?
How solid it is.
Solid.
Strong.
Strong. Right? It's strength. It's unmovability. Right? If the wind blows or if the storm comes, this is going to be sturdy. So, I'm thinking, Lord, do you want me to talk about foundation as we're reading through the scriptures? He says, yes. But he goes, it's not what you think. This is what I want you to ask yourself, and I want to encourage everyone in the room to ask themselves. Look at the difference. When we're reading through these passages, they had some issues. A lot of issues. I think they're issues we have from time to time. And so I think he's calling us to test our foundation. Not test our neighbor's foundation. That's easy to do. He's asking us to individually test our foundation. What is it built on? And as we read through Paul's letter to the Corinthians, he's asking them basically the same question in different ways. Amen? All right, so we're going to start out reading chapter 1, verses 1 through 19. I just didn't make the reading. Deborah, would you mind starting? If you can read maybe 6, 7 verses. And we'll just move around. Read the whole thing? Okay, go ahead. Would you mind reading the whole thing? Okay.
Shaul, a called emissary of Yeshua Messiah by the desire of Elohim and brother Sosthenes, to the assembly of Elohim which is at Corinth. So those who are set apart in Messiah, Yeshua called set apart ones, with all those calling on the name of Yeshua, Messiah, our Master, in every place, theirs and ours. Favor to you and peace from Elohim, our Father, and the Master Yeshua Messiah. I thank my Elohim always concerning you, for the favor of Elohim which was given to you by Messiah Yeshua, that in him you were enriched in all, in every word and all knowledge, as the witness of Messiah was confirmed in you, so that you are not lacking in any gift eagerly waiting for the revelation of our Master, Yeshua Messiah, who shall also confirm you to the end, unreprovable in the day of our Master, Yeshua Messiah. Elohim is trustworthy, by whom you were called into the fellowship of his Son, Yeshua Messiah, our Master. And I appeal to you, brothers, by the name of our Master, Yeshua Messiah, that you all agree and that there be no divisions among you, but that you be knit together in the same mind and in the same opinion. For I have been informed concerning you, my brothers, by those of the house of Chloe, that there are strife among you. What I mean is this, that each one of you says, I am of Shaul, or I am of Apollos, or I am of Kepha, or I am of Messiah. Has the Messiah been divided? Was Shaul impaled for you? Or were you immersed in the name of Shaul? I thank Elohim that I immersed not one of you except Crispus and Gaius, that no one should say that I immersed into my own name. Now I did also immerse the household of Stephanas. For the rest, I do not know whether I immersed anyone else. For Messiah did not send me to immerse, but to bring the good news, not with wisdom of words, that the stake of Messiah should not be nullified. For the word of the stake is indeed foolishness to those who are perishing. But to us who are being saved, it is the power of Elohim. For it has been written, I shall destroy the wisdom of the wise and set aside the learning of the learned ones.
Thank you. So let's look at this for a second. Who was this letter intended to? What does it say there?
Corinthians.
Is it only the Corinthians?
The assembly of Elohim
Messiah.
at Corinth.
And it says, along with everyone everywhere who calls on the name of the Lord Yeshua. I believe what Paul's saying is that there's a unification between the believers, whether they're right there in Corinth or in the other areas, the neighboring communities. He's saying it's for you guys, but don't forget, there's a larger part of the family here. And was it just Gentiles that were probably in Corinth? It was mixed. It's mixed. There was Jews, there was non-Jews.
Followers of the way.
Followers of the way.
All of them.
So what they had in common was their trust in Messiah. And they allowed that to be the unbreakable bond of a foundation. You see what I'm saying? That in and of itself was the foundation, and everything else was on top of it. At least that's what it was supposed to be. So what was his concern? What does he tell us was his concern? What was happening?
Following Paul or separate division
Right.
by
So,
teachers.
so when you have that type of division, what happens to a community?
Breaks up.
It breaks up.
Division.
It breaks up. And why were they divided?
Difference. False teachings.
Opinions.
Sounds like
Opinions,
pride to me.
pride, teachings. I mean, to say, I follow Paul, or I follow Apollos. I think that's. Did you have something, Jake?
Yeah, they were putting men on pedestals.
Correct.
They were saying, well, this man's better, his teachings are better, this guy says it better, this guy has more of the rock than this guy.
Right.
And they were comparing each other rather than, and that was what was causing the main division, rather than thinking of things that would build each other up. They decided to tear each other down with saying, they were of each person rather than saying that they were all of Messiah.
Correct. And so I kind of put this question in here, says, what does it mean to be of one mind and one purpose? Well, clearly, there was groups in there that weren't doing that. They had divided. They were causing those divisions. So what does it mean to be of one mind and one purpose? What would that look like?
Unity.
Unity.
agreeing instead of bickering.
Agreeing instead of bickering, Sherry?
Well, I mean, just like any family, not everybody's gonna agree on everything.
Sure.
But there are certain things that have to be upheld. We're a group that believes Jehovah is the God of Israel, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and so for someone to come in and say, yeah, no, I don't believe that, that would be a problem.
Yeah.
But if we have different opinions about certain things, how this is interpreted or that is interpreted, to make that the standard because that's what I think is wrong.
Going back to the word and reproofing whether that is correct, whatever they're saying.
It's true. Right?
I've always thought of it as like open hand issues and closed hand issues.
Okay.
So the closed hand issues are the ones that are like, okay, Yeshua is the Messiah. But we don't argue that. No one argues that. Like Sherry said, if someone comes in and does argue that, there might be a problem. The open hand ones are like the ones that what people divide on, typically. They're not ever the closed ones.
Right.
You know, they're the ones that are a little bit more like gray areas where you can go to the scriptures and
Right.
discuss. That's how I always thought of it.
No, and I think that's so true. Thanks, Ryan. And you know, did you have something real quick?
Reading through this, it just keeps coming back to me, verse 2. To the assembly of God which is in Corinth. He's writing about all these divisions, but he refers to it as one assembly.
Right.
So he starts out with the unity
Yeah.
and lays down the unity, and then he talks about what's dividing them.
And I think one of the things that we're learning as a group, as a community here, is that unity and uniformity are two totally different things. Unity is we're united in Messiah. We put our trust in Him. We believe in the Father. And then what's like what Adam taught on a week or so ago is that within those fences or those guardrails, there's freedom. There's freedom in our expression of our love and trust in Him. It never means you can go outside of that and start breaking all His commandments. I'm not talking about that. But I'm saying there are some differences of expression. And a lot of us will divide over those things. And that's what we're not supposed to do. So, do we do those things? Do we put our trust in the teaching of this person? We may have great, there's a lot of great teachers out there. I admire many of them. But you've got to be careful not to put your trust in the teacher. You can believe in the teaching that he's delivering or she's delivering, but it's Messiah who we're following. It's the Father, Spirit, not that person. And there are entire religions that are named after people. That, to me, should be a first clue.
I was just going to say, and that goes for, here too.
Oh, yeah.
What's cool about this format is that we've chosen to kind of spread it out, so all of us have this relationship with Jehovah and Yeshua and the Spirit. So everyone is reading and learning, and it's this format so we can share. It's not that, everyone be quiet so you can listen to what me and Joe have to say and just believe whatever we say and just follow like lemmings. That's not the point. We're all doing this. We're all just seeking by ourselves, and we're sharing what we find.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
And we should be like the Bereans, whatever you teach us, we should look up and make sure that it follows the Torah.
Absolutely. And
Well, I was just going to say, in that day and age, that meant Paul's teachings and the apostles' teachings. The Bereans tested those to make sure. You got to test those against Yeshua and against Torah.
yeah, you do. And are we supposed to rely on wisdom and intellect? No. What's interesting about that question is we're going to hear this theme over and over and over the next, as we finish chapter 1 and do chapter 2 and chapter 3. This theme is repeated over and over. And there are very poignant things that Paul says about that, doing that. And so, when we're thinking about, at the beginning I talked about what is our foundation, not, for me to inspect anyone else's, but what's mine? We're going to start, there's going to be some questions I think that are going to be challenging for all of us. I know they were challenging for me when I was typing them up. So I'm hoping that we can all dig into that. Then he says that the sacrifice of Messiah Yeshua is nonsense to those who are perishing. It's nonsense to them. And why would they consider it nonsense? I'll give you a hint. It has to do with the question right above it.
Is it thought that it's money?
Yes.
They basically consider them the authority. They're the God. They have the say, and what they say goes in their own life.
Yeah. And I think that when wisdom and intellect can get in the way, and I'm talking about worldly wisdom and intellect. I want to make sure that you understand that because that's what he talks about. That it can actually, without knowing it, we could be marginalizing Yeshua's impact in our lives. If that's what we keep going back to, is our knowledge and wisdom.
Okay, but also the Pharisees and Sadducees, their wisdom interfere.
That's my whole point.
Yeah, but I thought you said it was just okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Well, I think, from my understanding, he's the only God who's ever sacrificed himself for his people. That's kind of sounds crazy.
It goes against.
It's against what sacrificing yourself or sacrificing your children. God actually came and sacrificed himself for you.
Right. That goes against our intellect and wisdom, right?
Yeah.
It does.
Okay, and the Father helped me understand, because I think sometimes we get stuck on words and the definition of them. So when we say wisdom, we assume it's godly.
No.
Wisdom, the definition of wisdom is simply applying the knowledge you have for a purpose, and that can be either good or bad.
Correct. And that's what Paul is going to be fighting about, or fighting against, rather, when he's trying to encourage those in Corinth, the believers, to really take a look at themselves and what their foundation is built on. Because if you remember, when they were following idols, pagan idols, it was based on their intellect of them. Right? I mean, their idols could die, their gods could die, they would get replaced by other gods. It was all based on their understanding of it. So, any additional thoughts on this section right here before we move on? So let's continue reading chapter 1, verses 20 through 25. Are you wise?
No, I'm simple.
Rosie, can you read those 5 verses?
Where is the wise one? Where is the Torah scholar? Where is the debater of this age? Hasn't God made foolish the wisdom of the world? Foreseeing that in God's wisdom the world through its wisdom did not know God. God was pleased through the foolishness of the message proclaimed to save those who believe. For Jewish people ask for signs and Greek people seek after wisdom. But we proclaim Messiah crucified, a stumbling block to Jewish people and foolishness to Gentile people. But to those who are called, both Jewish and Greek people, Messiah the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men.
Wow. See what I was talking about? He's really digging into that now. So, this verse 19, it's actually a quote from Isaiah, is what he's talking about. It says, in a different translation, it said, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise and frustrate the intelligence of the intelligent. So this is our Creator saying this is what He's going to do. So it's not about how much we know. Because that's a hard one for us, guys. Even in our culture, that's a big deal. You know, we could put ourselves on a pedestal. Does that make sense? Where, you know, we are like the super believers. Well, that's not the case. You know, and he talked about it. What was that first sentence? Where are the Torah teachers? He didn't say, you know, where are the pagans? So that's a warning to us. Carlos, do you have something?
No, I was just gonna say, it's not what you know, but who you know.
That's true.
That's right.
That's true. So,
Hallelujah.
how did y'all look at today's thinkers? Right?
Stinkers. Not impressed.
Not impressed.
There's the thinkers.
So ask yourself, in a 24-hour period, what things consume your thoughts? Isn't that a good one? I asked myself that question. I'm like, okay, if I'm going to be brutally honest with myself, is it this? Or is it something else? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So think through. We're talking about our foundations. Does that make sense? Are you making the connection? Is your relationship with Messiah based on what you know? That's a tough one, right? Because you do need to know. So I'm not saying don't know and don't read, don't study. I'm not saying that at all. But what is it based on? Dogs bark. No. So it says Jews ask for signs. Greeks ask for wisdom.
Is that a car?
That is a
Yeah, they're trying to.
They're getting
Yeah.
fixed.
trying to fix it.
They're getting
It's in there.
It's an intentional break-in.
Yes. Jews ask for signs, Greeks ask for wisdom. What are you asking for?
Relationship.
Relationship. Right? But these are some big questions, right?
Yeah.
Because he's asking the Corinthians these same questions. So why don't we ask ourselves these same questions? And this isn't a Debbie Downer message. This is to encourage us to really take a good look at ourselves and walk it out. It says that Messiah's crucified as an obstacle to the Jew and nonsense to the Greek. Do you consider part of God's word as obstacles to your life, son?
Sometimes.
Let that soak in, yeah. I know, I do. I do. Are there parts of the word you consider nonsense because you're more concerned about what others think of you? That's a big one. That's a big one. So let these things marinate. You know, I by the silence I know you're thinking, but I want to encourage you to share. Is it possible that we question Jehovah's authority and morality because it doesn't suit our idea of trust? Right? I mean, the word says, who are we to question him? You remember we talked about the potter and the clay last week? Who gives God counsel? Who does he go to for wisdom?
He doesn't need to. He is wisdom.
Right.
The obstacle to the Jew and the nonsense to the Greek, the language there is so strong, I just wanted to share it.
Sure.
To the Greek, it's scandalon.
Scandalon? Where the word scandal came
We get
from?
our word scandal from it.
Right.
Scandalous. The word to the Greek is moros. We get moron from that.
Moron. Wow.
So if you think of, there's places in Corinthians, I believe it's in Corinthians further on, where Paul calls Messiah the scandalon.
Well, because it is.
Yeah.
For those who are perishing, it's
Totally
scandalous.
makes sense.
So, as we are believers, I think it's good to check our foundation from time to time and kind of make sure that our compass is pointing in the right direction. Amen? Any other thoughts on this section here? Or
You
now
put
about
Greeks ask for wisdom. I believe they ask for knowledge. There's a difference between knowledge and wisdom.
right, but I think they're choosing that word because they want worldly wisdom. That's kind of what Sherry was talking about. Or knowledge.
I was actually just studying that word today from Scanlon.
Any other thoughts on this section? All right. So we're going to wrap up chapter 1, verses 26 through 31. What do you boast about? Maggie, would you mind reading that section?
For look at your calling, brothers, that there were not many wise according to the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble. But Elohim has chosen the foolish matters of the world to put to shame the wise, and Elohim has chosen the weak of the world to put to shame the strong. And Elohim has chosen the lowborn of the world, and the despised, and the ones that are not, that he might bring to naught the ones that are, so that no flesh should boast in his presence. And of him you are in Messiah Yeshua, whom became for us wisdom from Elohim, righteousness also, and set apartness, and redemption. That is, as it has been written, he who boasts, let him boast in Yeshua. What is this? Sorry.
Yehovah.
In Yehovah.
I love the way he says that. But God shows what the world considers nonsense in order to shame the wise. God shows what the world considers weak in order to shame the strong. And God shows what the world looks down on as common or regards as nothing in order to bring to nothing what the world considers important. Can you see what's going on here? He's trying to correct their thinking about what they would typically be searching for. He's trying to change their compass. And I believe he's doing that for us as well. And it's a very personal matter. It really is. So let's discuss it. So why would he want to shame the wise?
They're proud, oftentimes.
Okay, pride
In themselves.
in themselves, okay.
Oftentimes their focus isn't on him.
Right.
Okay.
And then people look up to them because they can see them with their eyes. They're other humans, and it takes glory away from God. And now we're looking at these wise humans.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's true. And it kind of reminds me of when Messiah Yeshua is talking about the Pharisees. I believe it's in one of the Gospels, and he's basically describing them as the whitewashed tombs. They seek the approval of men. They want to have the best seats in the synagogue. They want to be, basically saluted as they walk through town. I'm paraphrasing. But, see, that to me is the wise. They believe their own press clippings.
The word that comes to mind is religious.
Religious, correct. Correct.
Mutual admiration society.
I'm sorry?
The
Mutual Admiration Society.
Yes. Okay? You're in the North 40. I can barely see you.
They put their belief in themselves,
Yeah.
not in the Father or Yahushua. And so that's why he shames them mostly. He rejects them. He rejects all of the commands. They reject all of the commands in Scripture instead of, and when they have problems, they look to themselves to solve them rather than looking to the Father or praying to him to help them, guide them through their problems. So he must shame them.
Well, and it's amazing. Thanks, Jay. It's amazing. My next question is basically, he uses the very people that they would look down upon
Right.
to do it. I mean, that's amazing. That's our God. He's like, I think he's got a sense of humor. And he's like, I'm going to use the very people you wouldn't even
That you
associate
shut
with to be the ones that are going to build my kingdom.
Or even a
Us.
Or even
Crazy.
a donkey.
Or a donkey that starts to speak.
Well, I believe he shames the wise though, because he wants man, woman, whatever, to know that their ways are perishing. Only his ways are the ones that are gonna give you wisdom, which to the world is gonna look foolish.
And true, and what he seeks from us isn't for our IQs to raise up. He wants a relationship with us.
Yeah.
He went so far as to send his son to die so we could have a relationship, a restored relationship with him. That's amazing. That's incredible. That's why our relationships are so important to him. He's saying don't quarrel, don't bicker, don't backbite each other. Don't be pointing your fingers at each other all day long. Because when we do that, and we say that we resemble him, are we?
No.
Well, he tells us if we have a dispute with someone, what we're supposed to do. You're
Yeah,
supposed
go to that person.
Not to another person,
Right.
go to that person.
Right.
But if you've gone to them over and over, you are allowed to seek counsel.
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a wonderful thing.
Then you go before, but the whole
The
point
elders,
is
yeah.
always for restoration,
Yeah, always.
always.
And I put on here, are you more interested in what others think of you than what God thinks of you? That's a big question.
Fear of man.
I mean, I know we all shake our head, well, of course not. But I really want you to think about who you actually are. And I'm not trying to insinuate anything. I'm just saying this is a good time for us to really look at ourselves and what our relationship with Messiah is actually based on. Does anyone have room to boast before God? Of course not. Can you? You know? Because there are people in this room who serve in the military, right? Can you imagine someone who's never served, someone who has no idea how to do what you do, come up to you and just start criticizing you that you don't know what you're doing? I mean, what would that make you feel like? Not too good, right?
Right.
Hurt.
Should we be doing that to the Creator? Do we do that through our life? Through the things we do and say, perhaps? Again, just some things to think about. Jake?
We only care what Yah thinks. Most of those people just go by the wayside because they can't understand what our belief is, and they look at us like we're crazy.
Like it's nonsense.
So we end up losing the relationships with family members and friends that we had growing up. You know,
It's hard.
I don't have people that I knew, 10 or 20 years ago, even 30, 40 years ago. I don't know any. I don't even talk to any of those people. And some of my family members, I don't even talk to anymore because they rejected all of y'all's ways and they just want to do their own thing.
When I think that our response to that is either going to show them who God is or show them who God is not. Does that make sense?
But isn't that the very essence of what trust or faith is?
Right.
And faith is I was reading this thing from Skip Malone, and he said it's a code word for relationship. That's what faith or trust is.
It is. Well, because
it only happens in an exchange.
Well, think about your own testimony.
That's good.
Wow.
Think about your own testimony. Where you were at in your life when you started to recognize who He was, and how your life started to change, and what you were doing in your life, things you got yourself into. Can you imagine if He just shut us out? Because we weren't perfect? Because we weren't doing exactly what He said? That's not how He works. Thank God that's not how He works. Now, once you start following Him, are there responsibilities? Absolutely.
What's the matter, baby?
Sorry.
What's the matter? You're okay. Sorry.
Joe, I was just thinking that when we do get criticized, it's at the level of somebody from Cleveland criticizing somebody from Jerusalem that they don't know the Hebrew language, when it's that kind of thing. Not that kind of thing, but
Right.
I'm trying to say something that's hard to put into words. When somebody attacks our faith, that doesn't know our faith, and I'm going to watch for this, it just really struck me that the very area they're attacking is probably the area that they're defending to
Right.
keep separated.
Right.
I recognize those the fastest.
I heard a saying that said, those who are offended the most, offend the most.
Yeah.
And it's not that they want to offend, they're trying to protect something that's
Right.
sacred to them, so
Right.
to speak.
Right. So
And
it
it's
feels
like-
like an offense to them.
Yeah. But as long as they can disprove what you're trying to say, then what they're holding on to is.
It's true. Right. And that's a hard thing, guys, because you know what? We've all done that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we've all done that in different parts of our lives.
Yeah.
You know, and that's okay. You know, we just don't want to stay in that.
Right.
We want to continue to grow, continue to walk, continue to move.
People are so easily offended these days, though, and they're very angry. Apostle Khan knows he doesn't have much time left, and so his unclean spirits, his demons are hard at work, and people cut you off, and they end up giving you the finger, and you don't even do anything.
Well, we're definitely living in a culture that is accelerating in a direction. When I was at the course today, there was a gentleman, I think he was with Pepsi Cola, and he shared with us, he lives in Pueblo, and they just had a situation where a 4-year-old student came home and got in trouble for something. And
4-year-old?
From like preschool or whatever that is.
Okay.
And yeah, it was like
Student?
preschool. But check this out. So the little girl goes home and breaks something or whatever. I forgot exactly what it was. And it was someone in his family that this happened to. And the parents were upset, and she got a spanking for it, got punished for it, and went to school and told her teacher what happened. And the teacher told her, do you know if you call 911, your parents will be arrested?
4-year-old?
Yeah, 4 years old. 4 years old.
Not 4 years old.
Yeah. And she actually told her mom and dad, I was told today I can call 911 and have you arrested if you spank me again. I'm just sharing that because that's the culture we're in.
Wow.
So we have to be aware of that. We're in the world, but we're not of the world, right? So we have to understand that.
It's hard to believe, but 4-year-old.
And this next one here, should we place ourselves above others because of our knowledge?
Genius kid.
Should we be placing ourselves above other people because of our perceived knowledge of God?
No.
No, right?
If anything, I think we should be servants to other people to draw them.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
The more wisdom we have, the more knowledge we have, godly wisdom, godly knowledge. Shouldn't that not translate into more humility?
Yes. And
More
gentleness.
servanthood? Perfect.
And
That's
gentleness.
exactly right. But what often happens is the opposite, right?
Right.
We kind of get, I am pretty cool. I am pretty knowledgeable. I got a few disciples of my own now. That's not what he's after. Does that make sense? That's not what he wants. And someone was telling me, I think it was Michael. Was it Michael? You're talking about one of the televangelists being investigated right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get a lot of people, thousands and thousands and thousands of people to follow someone. And they start giving them their money and all these things. And things start to change. You start believing certain things, I believe. So it's important for us to know that even within our own circles of influence and who we are, where do we put ourselves? Do we really put ourselves as servants? Do we really humble ourselves? Or is that a great thought, and it sounds great coming out of our mouths, but when push comes to shove, what do we do? Right? That's a good point. Because of what we know, because of who we are and who we follow, we should be the biggest servants. We should be very, very patient.
Right.
I'm not saying that be okay with sin, don't misunderstand me. But that should be our calling card, is that we are loving and caring.
Isn't there a fine line, but between that and defending your family member or yourself or something like that, depending on the scenario. So it's not every day, depends on every situation. You can't say that, if somebody does something to the family, you're going to be more servant, more compassion. It's because you have a responsibility also to defend the family or those loved ones, because they depend on you.
I agree, but when you defend them, do you defend them in a biblical way? Or do you defend them in a worldly way?
Right.
No, it depends.
That's the difference.
It depends. Like I said, every case is different.
But
for
I don't think it's ever okay to defend them in a worldly way.
Well, it is okay if they have a gun, got a knife, and they intend to
No,
break
but
it.
the Bible tells us what we do to protect ourselves.
That's not worldly.
No, the Bible tells us what we do in those situations.
Yeah, we gotta use.
Your sword,
Yeah,
sell your clothes.
exactly.
Yeah,
Self-defense is
Mm-hmm.
it's totally.
Perfectly scriptural. So I'm not talking about that.
That is.
What I'm talking about is there are things that we could be doing that aren't biblical.
Getting that straight.
You know, you understand what I'm saying?
Someone who
But-
bullies someone else.
Who is our example?
Sure.
Messiah.
When he was being beaten up for our sake, did he fight back? Did he?
No.
Okay. When he was being spit on and his beard was being torn out for our sake, did he say, "Do you guys know who I am"? No, he didn't. So again,
But he
I
had-
know it doesn't seem right to us. What I'm just saying is, go back to the Word.
But he had a purpose.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's what I was about to
he
say.
sacrificed.
So
And that
he knew
was-
his purpose
Thank you.
as to why he was allowing that
Yep,
to himself.
exactly.
And we share that same purpose if we follow Him.
There's a
We do.
We should be
We
sharing
are
that
supposed
exact
to be
same purpose.
imitating.
Go ahead.
yeah, no, there's a time for all things. There's a time for
Right,
war,
yeah,
there's a time for
season
peace.
war.
There's a time to go peacefully while you're being persecuted.
That's true.
And the big thing is constantly going back to God and being sensitive to the Spirit so that we know in that situation, God has me here, I don't need to do a thing. Or
Here's the
God's
steps
telling
that
me,
He's
get
telling
up
you
and
to do.
go.
And He would never tell you to do something that was against His Word.
Right.
So it's always going to be within the framework of His truth, correct?
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it can be very aggressive. He was aggressive. Sometimes it can be
He
very,
whipped
Very
people.
gentle.
very gentle because
He
He was
whipped
gentle.
people at times.
Right, but the people that he was aggressive with were the ones that were defiling the name of Yehovah.
Right.
They knew better. They weren't the common people that didn't know.
Correct. Like I said, those different situations. I guess what I'm pointing to
Mm-hmm.
is that we don't want to get into a position where we change the Word of God to suit our situation. We seek the Word of God to know what to do in the situation. Does that make sense? There's a pretty big difference between the two. Amen.
We're also not to be cowardly either.
Yeah, you shouldn't step back.
Cowards will be in the lake of fire. What's that?
Yeah, we don't, but again, we could debate what cowardly means for the next couple of hours. You know,
God guides you in every
Sure.
situation
I agree.
Basically
to what it tells
The Spirit guides.
That's
And
right.
Perfect.
and your own heart in
So-
all actions.
That's right.
Right.
So we shouldn't put ourselves above others because of what we know. He warns us about that over and over and over. And then, so by whose power are we united in Messiah? We just read that. It's His power, not our own.
It's so situational. The way you worded it just really struck me. Messiah lays down his life in the power of the Spirit. David slays Goliath
That's
In
right.
the
in
power of
the power
Spirit.
of the
That's
Spirit.
right.
Exactly. Both
And
in
he
the power of the
uses
Spirit.
war.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Good point. So, through who or what do we attain godly wisdom, righteousness, holiness, and redemption? Because He's telling us that is the power of the Spirit. That's where these things come from. It doesn't come from knowledge and wisdom. It can't. It says it comes from His Spirit. That's what where these things come from, is the Spirit.
What would our, and I'm speaking to me, okay?
Good, that's what I'm after.
Speaking to me, I'm not trying to criticize, but this picture, David, power of the Spirit, Goliath, you're going down. Messiah, in the power of the Spirit, I'm going down, right? How different would it be if our Bible colleges and seminaries measured student success based on the evidence of the fruit of the Spirit rather than being able to answer things correctly?
Right.
I think how would that translate in just about every area of our life? In a way.
That's awesome.
I would have flunked out in college.
Me too.
Well, you think about, there's nothing wrong with learning and being learned and to become a student, whatever field you're in, there's nothing wrong with that. But that's not your trust and your faith. Does that make sense? He wants us to be the best at what we do,
It's not your
right?
relationship.
He wants us to honor Him through our jobs, through our careers, through our vocations, through whatever it is we're doing.
Well, that's the fruit.
That's the fruit.
Yeah.
But the foundation can't be what we know.
Yeah.
It's what we do.
So I can answer very correctly what are the 9 fruit, singular of the Spirit, and even write out in Greek, because I'm in a Greek class, right? And have none of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I was shocked to find out that some of the most noted Bible scholars were not believers. They just studied the Word and knew it inside and out in the languages, but from a personal trust standpoint in being a God of the universe, no.
That's
It just boggles my mind.
yeah.
Right, some,
I agree.
I was just gonna say that, some years ago, the Barna Group, which does these surveys, did one about how many actual pastors believed what they taught. And it was really high percentage that didn't. This was the job they did to make money for their family. They did not believe the things that they preached.
That's crazy.
So again, that comes back to us. It really does, because we are no different. So we have to walk that line. Make sure that how we live, what we believe, are we perfect? No. Are we ever going to be perfect? Not until we're dead and we're with Him. But we walk as if the one who we follow is perfect. We put our trust in Him, and then we walk through that and learn and continue to grow.
That's right.
Closer to Him. And really, the only evidence that I can find of our faith is our relationships with other humans. You don't follow God in a vacuum. Right? Are you a good husband or wife? Are you a good friend? Are you a good sister? Are you a good employee? I could go on and on and on.
Yeah.
And those are the things that really describe who you are. Not who you think you are. It's who you actually are. The best way to know who you are is to ask someone else to tell you.
I was just gonna say somebody had said that. I can't remember who. Someone here at the assembly had said, ask the people in your life because they're gonna be a better gauge for you about your fruit.
It's true. It's true. All right.
Hey Joe, should we pause for Shabbat?
Is it time?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's put it. Oh, can we pause it?
No, but we can stop and do a continued.
Okay.
Or we can just, yeah.
Why not?
Doesn't
I
have a
would
pause.
stop it.
I would stop it because we're going to be a little bit. We're going to usher in Shabbat.
Actually, good time.
Plus, I think we need to stretch.